So the 10th Vanish is just a simple way of vanishing a card. Generally when people teach this move, they only teach the mechanics. But there's actually a whole lot more behind why this move actually works. And that's what I wanted to go over in this video. So generally throughout history, this move is associated with Arthur Finley. This is because in Jacob Daly's notebooks, published back in 1972 by Dr. Jacob Daly, there's a move called Finley's Book Color Change. So, well, okay, two notes about this. So the first one is Arthur Finley's name is actually misspelt in this for some reason. There's a D in that, so it's become Finley for some reason, even though earlier on Finley was actually spelled correctly in his notes. So that's just a really weird note. And the second note is that Dr. Jacob Daly calls this a color change, even though this is a vanish. So I'll just quote something from the book. Quote, "Rub hand to show it has vanished," unquote. So it's clearly a vanish, but it's called a color change for some reason. So that's just really weird, I guess. But anyways, this was an idea for face-up 10th Vanish, and it's credited to Arthur Finley. Now, 1972 seems pretty late for the 10th Vanish to just like pop up, right? And you'd be right, because there's actually a couple of publications that pop up before Dr. Jacob Daly's notebooks. But Dr. Jacob Daly's notebooks is just a compilation of Dr. Jacob Daly's notes, as you can tell from the title, which were written in 1930 and 1940. Oh, well, in between of those two ranges, right? So the 10th Vanish had existed prior to those dates because, again, Dr. Jacob Daly's notes were ideas from Arthur Finley, who had predated that. So we can assume that the 10th Vanish had predated 1930 to the 1940 range, okay? So earlier on, I did make mention of other publications that had mention of a 10th Vanish, so I'll just mention them over here. The first one is it was part of an effect called Toss Over Card that was published in Tarbell Course in Magic, Volume 5, back in 1948 and by Harlan Tarbell. In that effect, there's actually a move by Carmen D'Amico that was sort of similar to the 10th Vanish, but it is in a different grip. In Stars of Magic, which was a manuscript, which was multiple manuscripts actually, from the 1940s to the 1950s by George Stark. There's an effect called Slow Motion for Aces by Di Vernon. There's a face-up 10 Vanish that's actually the same as Dr. Jacob Daly's method, but it is done as a packet and not with a whole deck. And then where most people actually know the 10th Vanish from, Larry Jennings' Open Travelers, which was first published. I know most people didn't really read that, but it was first published in Expert Card Mysteries back in 1969 by Alton Sharp. And that's the general history behind the 10th Vanish. And that's why we've come to know it as the Arthur Finley 10th Vanish, because Dr. Jacob Daly gave the credit to Arthur Finley. So let's start with the Carmen D'Amico Vanish. So you're gonna have the card that you want to vanish held at the left index, thumb, and middle finger above of the deck face down. So let's just have a easier card to sort of spot. We're going to use the Ace of Spades. The Ace of Spades is the card that we want to vanish. So you want to hold it in between of the fingertips of your left index, your left middle finger, and your left thumb, just like so, and it's held above of the deck. And because of just the way that your fingers are positioned, this card will be sort of slanted, like so. And this is held at the fingertips to give the most distance from this card to the deck, okay? Next thing you're going to do is that your right hand actually approaches this card almost as if to palm it. So it's going to approach with fingers closed, like so, or you can have them slightly open to really give the impression that these fingers are going to wrap around this card, like so, okay? So it's going to come over, and as the right hand covers the card, so there will be a brief moment where your fingers will close and cover this card from view from the audience. And as it covers this card, here, you're just going to relax your left fingers, right? You're just going to relax them, and by relaxing them, this just drops this card on top of the deck. So just a simple relaxation motion, and you'll notice it just drops straight down back on top of the deck. If the card doesn't land square, you can use the ring finger and pinky finger to just sort of align the card with the rest of with the index and the thumb, to just make sure that it's not like angled or whatever, because then that's really suspicious. So if it lands like slightly off, you can just like reposition it with these fingers, okay? So after this relaxation motion and the squaring action under the cover of the right hand, your right hand is just going to curl in its fingers a bit, so then it really looks like you're palming and grabbing this card. And then you're just going to move your right hand away from the deck, so now it's really like, it looks like you've just taken this card off of the deck. And you're just going to do whatever that you want to vanish this card. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of ideas on how you should vanish this card because it's empty. But what you can do is just a simple crumble away, right? You can just close your fingers a bit, almost like you're crumbling this card, and then it vanishes like so. Okay, so that's just a very simple method of vanishing a card, but it's not quite the one that we know nowadays, right? So that is the Carmen Vanish. Now let's go over the Arthur Finley Vanish, what we know as the tent vanish nowadays. We call it that because when we prop this card up, it looks like an A-frame, which is a sort of tent, okay? So take the card that you want to vanish and have the long edges actually supported by the pad of your thumb over here. And then you're gonna have the other long edge supported by the middle finger, the ring finger, and then the pinky finger on the opposite end. So now it's propped up just like so. So you have the same isolation over here, okay? Your right hand approaches, again, to seemingly palm this card, like so. And again, there will be a brief moment where your right hand actually covers the entirety of this card, okay? And that's when you actually execute the dirty work. So once your right hand covers the entirety of this card, your left thumb is just going to relax. And by relaxing, this card just drops on top of the deck, okay? So it just drops, simple like that, okay? And this all happens under the cover of the right hand. And once you vanish this card, so after the relaxation motion, same thing as the Carmen Vanish, you're just going to curl in your finger to seemingly palm this card, and you're just going to just move away from the deck and just crumple it away, okay? So generally, when you cover this entire card, a bit of the thumb is actually exposed, like so. But that's actually what we want, because that's actually a very nice subtlety, because it's almost like none of your fingers actually move throughout this entire process, right? And it's gone, right? So showing this thumb is actually a very nice subtlety when you vanish this card, okay? I'll touch on more about the thumb a bit later on, but generally you should show the thumb and it is unmoving, right? So that's just something that you should take into consideration. And also, as an additional note, because I don't know where else to put this, but if you do the move with a double instead of a single card, and you still do the vanish, you can then show the top card as being different, right? So it's almost like you actually vanished this card, okay? So you can do it with a double instead of a single, and that allows you to show the top card. Otherwise, if you do want to do it with a single card, and you still do the vanish, then if someone actually suspects the top of the deck, you can do a double lift, right, to show that it is a different card. So generally there are these are the two ways to really clean up after yourself, but it depends on what your application is, right? Again, double, vanish, and then it almost looks like it vanishes from the top, or single, vanish, and then double. Okay, so it all depends on procedure and whatnot, but those are just additional ideas to really show the top of the deck as being different, right? So yeah, that's just additional ideas. Now let's go over the face-up tent vanish. This is the technique that Di Vernon and Dr. Jacob Daly both use, except Di Vernon used it with a packet, but it's just the same mechanics, okay? So it's going to be the exact same thing as the regular tent vanish. The card is actually propped up against your thumb and whatnot, except you actually have a card palmed in your right hand, just like so. Okay, so you have a card palmed, and the card that's propped up is face up, like so, okay? So this is your preparation, okay? So once your right hand, so again, you're just going to do the exact same thing as a regular tent vanish, but you have to be conscious of not flashing this card over here, or else that's going to be, well, trouble. So you're going to do the exact same thing as a regular tent vanish. Your right hand is going to come over and cover everything, okay? Your right hand is just going to cover the card from view. And once your right hand has covered everything in view, you're just going to do the exact same thing as a regular tent vanish. You're just going to relax this thumb. But at the same time, your right hand is also going to relax its pressure on this card. So generally when you're palming a card, it's going to be held by the pinky and the fat of your thumb. So at the same time, you're going to relax pressure on those two pressure points, which allows this card to drop from your palm and fall on top of the deck, like so. Okay, and also this card is bent because I held it in the palm for a while. Generally, it should be pretty fast, so you don't have to worry about this card being bent all that much. Okay, so with the card now on top of the deck, it almost looks like you actually grabbed this face-up card because, well, there's a contrast now. There's a contrast of you seeing this face-up card and then seeing the rest of the deck, right? So once you have this contrast, that's a nice subtlety, right? So same thing as before, you grab everything and you just crumble the rest away. Okay, so that is the face up tent vanish. Very simple. You just need to add a palm card to the fray, and it's a nice subtlety to vanish a face up card. Okay, so that is the face up tent vanish. Nothing too difficult. Again, it's just a relaxation to add this card on top of the other card. Okay. So let's go into different ways of vanishing this card. Like I said before, you can grab the card, you can grab the card and then slowly crumple it out of existence, right? The other thing that you can do is that you can deposit the card somewhere and reveal your hand to be empty. So if I want to grab this card, here I'm going to place it down here and it vanishes, right? The other way that you can do it is that you can sort of flip your hand towards yourself, acting as if you're reading the card's information before revealing that it is gone. So this should be done after a peek. So you can do whatever peek of your choice, vanish this card, flip it towards yourself. So you're like reading off of the card's information. Ah, yeah, so your card is the ace of spades, right? Yeah. Then you flip it back down and then you crumple it away. So it's like you're reading off of a nothing, right? So it's a nice subtlety that you still had the card here, and then it's under the motion here that vanishes. So that's just a nice timing based vanish as well. The last thing that you can do is a tossing action, right? So if you grab this card, you do the tent vanish, and then you seemingly just toss it, but under the guise of like seemingly tossing it, it vanishes, right? So So it's like you have a card here and then poof, it's gone, right? So poof. So that's just 4 different ways of vanishing this card, right? Different ideas, because I do to crumple quite a bit, but there are different ways of vanishing the card, right? So yeah, that's just a couple of ideas on how you can dispose of the card that's in your hand. So this is Olram's 10th Vanish. This was published in Marlowe's Magazine Volume 5 back in 1984. So it's just going to be the exact same thing as the face-up 10th Vanish. The main difference is that the card that's propped up on your thumb is face down. So you have a card palmed in advance, and you have a card propped against your thumb face down, like so. So it's just going to be the same thing as the face-up 10th Vanish. Your right hand covers the deck, and under the guise of covering this deck, you're just going to relax this card, causing it to fall on top of the deck. And as this card falls, you're going to replace the palm card, but in the exact position of where the propped up card was. So your palm card just replaces itself in between of the left middle ring and pinky finger and of your thumb, like so. So it's just in action, it's just going to be this. And now you have the card replaced, okay? So now that you have this card in position, you're going to shift your right hand into a bill grip. So it's just going to move itself, you're just going to sort of cock your wrist towards the right. And now you're just going to move itself in a bill grip, like so. So it's just going to move into a bill grip. So all of this is sort of meant to be done as a squaring action. So it's going to be a replace and then a squaring action, like so. Okay? And then you have successfully completed the switch. And you could just grab the card and just place it elsewhere. So Marlowe actually used it as a 4-for-4 card switch, but I don't quite like that handling because it feels too singular, because you have 4 cards squared up and propped against your thumb, the switch happens, and then they remain as a block as in your right hand. So it's just very weird because you're squaring up a block already, so it's kind of weird. But if you were to do it as a multiple card switch, I would prefer it like this. So you have the cards that you want to switch in, palmed in your right hand, like so. So in this case, I'm doing it with 4 cards, right? You're going to display the cards that you want to switch out on top of the deck, face up, like so, okay? Now you're just going to loosely square the cards. So now these cards are very loosely squared up, and you're going to turn them over and prop them against your thumb. So you still have these uneven edges, but that's what we want, okay? So with that, your right hand comes over, you drop all these cards, and you can use your index to just square everything up. Now you can use your left index to square everything up. You execute the switch, and now you're just going to do the exact same thing. You're just going to add the squaring motion and move into a bill grip, just like so. And you're just going to place everything off to the side, okay? So basically the main difference between Marlowe and my handling is that I leave these cards very sort of loose, and then you have this squaring action to really give justification as to like why your right hand is covering the packet, because you're moving into a bill grip, okay? So if we do it with the same backs, right, you have these cards over here, you have everything sort of loosely squared up, and then you place everything, and that is the switch, okay? So that is the 10th switch as a multiple card switch. Nothing too difficult, but again, this is just a different application for the 10th Vanish, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, that is Olram's 10th switch. So with all the mechanical stuff out of the way, let's discuss why this move actually works. With how simple this move is, you'd have to wonder how it survived the test of time. So when we perform a visual sleight, it's very different from other sleights because we don't have the benefit of misdirection. For a visual sleight to have the most amount of impact, we need all eyes on us for this one moment, right? Because if you just do a vanish and no one's looking, then what's the point, right? So, but then that means that all the tiny movement that comes with sleight of hand will also be in full view. Because, I mean, we like to pretend that we do like magic and whatnot, but people do take notice of like tiny like little pressure changes here and there, right? So even like movements like flexing your fingers to square the deck will be noticed, okay? And these tiny movements usually indicate that you're doing something. So the reason why the 10 Vanish actually works is that there's none of that, right? You relax your hand and the card falls and the rest of your hand is completely still. So when I do the 10 Vanish, look how still my hand is actually. I'm gonna have to twist my wrist a bit, but look how still everything is, right? I mean, you saw the shadow, but still, right? So look how still this thumb is. It's in full view this entire time, but it never moves. It never moves, and that's why it looks so nice. It's sort of the same thing with the Tony Chang Vanish, where you see you see the card in full view, and the deck hand just never moves. Everything is still, but the card still vanishes, which means that there's a distinct lack of any like subterfuge or anything like that, which makes the move look insanely good, right? So the Vanish is devoid of all movement, which indicates the lack of anything suspicious, which makes the move look nice. So that's why this move has lasted for so long, okay? So yeah, it's just because it's unchanging. The status quo is present throughout the entire move, right? So that's why it's nice, okay? So that's going to be it for the 10 Vanish. If you want to learn more about the 10 Vanish or any other moves regarding like that are similar to the 10 Vanish, there are a couple of sources that I can give you. So the first off, it's going to be The Cloak by Daniel Prado. It's a very nice face-up 10 Vanish. There's going to be 52 Memories by Jack Parker, written by Andy Gladwin. There's a slight finesse for the 10 Vanish. There's also Best of Friends Volume 3 by Harry Lorraine, sorry. So yeah. And then there's The Art of Astonishment by Paul Harris. There's another finesse for the 10 Vanish as well. Valerino by Jean-Pierre Valerino. Blomberg Laboratories by Thomas Blomberg. And those are basically all the sources that I can recommend you for the 10 Vanish. But there are obviously more, but these are just the ones that I like. And that's the 10 Vanish. It's not really a difficult move, but it's a very fascinating one because of just the amount of like theory behind like why it works, right? Just the stillness of the hand, and there's this one card that's like isolated from the rest, right? It's a very fascinating move, and that's what I really like about sleight of hand. Everything that has survived the test of history, there's a reason for that. Even though this move is really stupidly simple, there's those two subtleties, that just make it, that just sort of makes you understand why it actually survived for so long, right? And why other moves have not. So that's just the 10 Vanish, right? And yeah, it's just a fascinating little piece of sleight of hand, which if you look a bit deeper, there's actually some theory as to why it survived for so long. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me today. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you guys next time.